I'm going to begin now. As I speak, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I know I just said put your name and your age in the chat, but if you have any particular questions, please put them in the chat. I am going to, let me close out on my music so I can put my clock on. I am going to use the end of the presentation to answer questions. If I don't get to your question, please do email me. I'd be happy to answer your questions. And as you will see, I will also be offering a free hour consultation. So that's kind of cool if you have specific questions. But please do use the Zoom chat, and that's the way I'm going to answer questions during the call. So before I start, just want to tell you a little bit about me. Why I'm here. My name is Mandee Heller Adler. I grew up in Miami Beach, Florida. Just like all the kids on this call, I went to school in South Florida. I went to Miami Beach Senior High, go High Tides. I don't see any on this chat, but that's okay. And I left high school. I went to the University of Pennsylvania, which is in Philadelphia. And while I was there, I started writing the book that you see on the screen. The purpose of the book was because I got to Penn and I didn't see a lot of students like me who were from basically urban public schools. And I thought, you know, why aren't there more public school students here? And what I discovered, quite frankly, was that the students had college counseling, and I didn't have much college counseling in my big public school. A lot has changed since then. So I know a lot of you have really awesome CAP counselors. So, you know, shout out to them, but still the private schools do provide more hands-on support if for no other reason that there is a better ratio of students per counselor. So that said, I went to Penn, I graduated, I actually went to work on Wall Street. I worked for a place called Goldman Sachs. Anyone wants to work on Wall Street, it's a great place to work. And then I finished working there for 2 years. I moved on to Harvard Business School, graduated from Harvard. I actually worked in retail for a few months. And then I started an internet company. And that was the time before the internet bubble. And it was a really exciting time to be young in New York. And I was fortunate to have sold the internet company. And then I worked for the company that acquired my internet company. Fast forward a few years, I got married. We were thinking about where we could live, and South Florida, you know, popped into mind. My family's still here. I still love it here. And we moved back to South Florida, and I realized I need to reinvent myself again. I sold my business, and what do I want to do now that I'm in South Florida? And I started thinking back at my life, and I realized that I had all these amazing opportunities because of my education. So I stand before you, or Zoom before you, as someone who really values education and really believes in education. My education I believe has opened a lot of fabulous doors, and my life mission is to help other kids have similar opportunities, which result from a wonderful education. And not everyone needs to go to Penn, and not everyone needs to go to Harvard, but I do believe that there is a school out there for every child, and maximizing your education is a great way to, you know, provide stability and provide opportunities that you wouldn't have had otherwise. So moving to South Florida, I started International College Counselors. Oh, we did something for Girl Scouts. This is wrong, so ignore the Girl Scouts, but we provide one free consultation for all Achieve Miami students too. I started International College Counselors out of this office. This is my home office. We now have 11 offices, 8 in South Florida. We have one in Charlotte, New York, Westport, Connecticut, and as you can see throughout South Florida. And we have 13 different counselors, and we work on everything that's tangentially related to college. So high school planning, extracurricular activities, essay editing. We also refer our students to wonderful programs like Achieve Miami, and I'm really excited to be a partner with Achieve. As you can see, I also support the Girl Scouts, and so with this webinar, as well as the Girl webinar, families are open to a free hour consultation. And after this call, after this, you're going to be receiving an email that gives you instructions as to how to register for that free consultation. So once again, going back to the beginning, if you have specific questions you want answered during this webinar, please do enter it into the chat. It's hard for me to toggle back and forth while I'm talking, but certainly at the end, I will look at the questions. And then also, if you have specific questions relating to your kids, know that you are as important, if not more important, than a Girl Scout, and we will provide 1 hour of free consultation. So thank you so much for being on. So the most important thing for college admissions that I want to tell all of you seniors and all of you juniors on this call, plan, don't panic. There still is a long summer. There's a lot you can do. I would highly advise you not to wait till the end of the summer to get this stuff done. There's actually a lot to do when you're applying to college. And this webinar is your beginning of your path, but don't panic, start to plan. Once again, if you have specific questions, please put them in the chat or wait for your 1 hour consultation. But definitely the important thing is that you don't wait till the last minute and that there is some planning that go into this process. So the first thing I want to answer for, especially for those rising seniors, what are the recent changes in college admissions? I don't need to tell you guys that the world has turned upside down since last year. And not only has it impacted your high school experience, but it has also impacted the college admissions process. I would say there are 2 key changes to the college admissions process that rising seniors in particular, guys, please pay attention to. Number 1 is test changes, and number 2 is student life from offline to online. And what I mean by these is test changes. Most colleges, I say most, not all, have gone test optional. Please note that at the current time, this does not include the Florida public schools, does not include the Florida public schools, but it does include all of the Ivy League schools, California-based schools, most of the extremely competitive schools in the US are not requiring the SAT or the ACT. So that is a huge change. For those students who know about subject tests, which are required by a very limited number of colleges, I can't think of a single college that's requiring a subject test right now. So if you haven't taken your SAT or ACT, do not stress, but do check to make sure that your school has gone test optional before deciding not to take it altogether. The second point, as far as student life from offline to online, this is very important when we get to the point about extracurricular activities. So for a lot of you, especially the rising seniors, your junior year was your year when you were really going to showcase your talents, your strengths, right? This was the year when maybe you became president, you were going to become president of Model UN or the debate team or your swim team or your football team. Everybody knows that those things did not happen at the end of your junior year or the end of your sophomore year. So do not worry that your extracurricular activities are not taking place. Same thing with the summer, right? Maybe you were supposed to have a job and maybe you're supposed to go to a summer program. Maybe you're supposed to do some summer school. We are fully aware that all of the offline activities have moved to online. So please know there's a key change with college admissions. Colleges, a lot of them are not looking for standardized tests, and a lot of them, and all of them, are not looking for you to have done some fabulous, offline activity during this time. So with these 2 points in mind, recognizing that things are constantly evolving, how can you prepare for the application process? And this is the same for the rising seniors and the rising juniors, just the rising seniors, you kind of need to get on this a little quicker. So without a doubt, the number 1 college admissions priority is grades, right? That's it. So if there's anything you can do to raise your grades this summer, maybe take an online class, maybe speak to a teacher to raise your grade, anything you can do, the grades, the grades, the grades. So a lot of times students think, oh my God, if I only do this amazing nonprofit work, or I spend 8,000 hours working at the library, that's going to make up for my D or my F in math. The answer is no. The most important thing are your grades, and everything else is great, but it's definitely of secondary importance. Colleges look at everything from 9th, 10th to 11th grades. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And if you're not admitted early, 12th grade grades still matter. Another thing that matters in 12th grade, and this is for my seniors, my rising seniors, your course selection, right? So this is not the year to say, I'm not going to take Spanish, or I'm not going to take AP English, or I'm not going, I'm going to move down. No, this is the year when you want to show the schools that you are taking the hardest classes you can, recognizing full well that a lot of your grades might not go to the schools. So you can take these tough classes, do not fail these classes, right? So what I say to my seniors, once you get into college, you can still get your offer rescinded if your grades are not held up, but you might not need the straight A's that you had in 9th and 10th and 11th grades. So going back to this, this is the only slide I'm going to spend this much time on. Grades are the most important piece of the application process. Seniors do take a rigorous curriculum, and juniors do make sure that your junior year is as strong as possible, because there's nothing that will be more important than your grades for the college admissions process. So what about the SAT and ACT? Do they count as much as they used to? So this is a slide with an asterisk, because in previous years, the SAT ACT was an essential part of the application process. So with all this in mind, as far as the changes in some schools being optional and some schools being not, my recommendation to all students, every student on this call, every rising senior, if you have not taken the SAT ACT, do not stress, because colleges understand that there have been issues. However, I would still recommend you do what you can to take the test in the fall. So the SAT and ACT have both added dates for the fall. As it currently stands, you should be able to take the SAT or ACT, in which case, please try to take the SAT or ACT. If you don't do well, then fine, maybe you don't submit the scores. But if you have good scores, it will certainly put you at an advantage for college. So in one sentence, even though schools are test optional, if you can, I would highly recommend that everyone still study and take the SAT and ACT, because that will provide you with the most opportunities. And also, as I mentioned, at the current time, the Florida public schools are still requiring standardized tests. Here I mentioned also something, as I mentioned, called the subject tests. Those are only required at some super competitive colleges, and right now those tests really are not being looked at by the schools, or at least mandatory. If you are a rising junior, I see a few of you are, please do consider these subject tests if you can, because just like the SAT and ACT, even if they're not required, if you have a good score, it can only help, right? I put on here the official websites for the SAT and ACT. That's where you sign up. There's also free test prep on those two websites. And if you want to know which schools are test optional, please check out fairtest.org. If you need fee waivers for your SAT, ACT, please check with your school counselor. You do not have to worry about paying for the SAT or ACT if you're unable to pay. Your school can provide you with what's called a waiver. I'm looking online and I see that Gift had asked a question. I will get to you, Gift. If anyone else has questions, please add those to the chat box, because I'm super excited to answer questions at the end. All right, another piece of the application process that a lot of students ask about are extracurricular activities, right? So applying to college is a four-legged stool. The first one is grades, which we talked about, most important. SAT, ACT, sort of a wobbly importance this year, but if you have a good score, certainly could help. And a third piece is these extracurricular activities. And a lot of students ask me, how many do I need? Is just doing Achieve Miami enough? Do I need to do Achieve Miami? What else do I need? The answer to that question is that you need extracurricular activities. That is super important, most especially for the Florida public schools. You want to go to UF, you want to go to FSU, you want to go to UCF. You need these extracurricular activities. But the trick is not to just sign up for a bunch of different clubs. Choose depth over breadth. So if you like Achieve Miami, which I hope you do, go to Achieve. There's a board, there's a regional board. Try to be on the regional board. If you can work over the summer. So in previous years, I know there was an in-person, but now there's online stuff. Try to do that for Achieve. Whatever you do, do it well. There's an Abraham Lincoln quote, which I actually have on the wall in my office, which I'm not in right now. And it says, whatever you are, be a good one. So less breadth, more depth. This can include clubs inside and out of school, outside of school, community service, anything that allows you to showcase your interests and your abilities. And really the way to think about it is colleges are looking for students who are going to contribute to their campus. So if you contribute to your home, to your community, your school, you are more likely to contribute to their campus, and that is a key reason why they would want to accept you. So any questions about that, please add to the chat, and I will get to that by the end of the presentation. The final piece of the stool is your character, right? And your character comes across in your essays and your letters of recommendation. So to answer the question, how important are the letters of recommendation? They're really important, right? So if you are a rising senior, one thing I would like to recommend to you today is reach out to those teachers that you're going to have writing your letters of recommendation and give them a lot of time to write your letter. The more time they have, the better job they will do. I used to work in a school in Boca in Palm Beach, and when students asked me the day before the application was due, I certainly wrote the letter of recommendation, and I wrote to the best of my ability. But do I think it was as good as the letters I wrote over the summer, where I had 3 months to come back and look and fix and change and add? No. You know, so teachers are just human. So the more time they have, the better job they can do. So there's no reason why you can't email your teachers now, ask them for letter recommendation. They might not reply to you, they might not even get the email, but at least you're giving the maximum amount of time to the teachers to write your letters of recommendation. You will likely need letters of recommendation from 2 teachers and 1 counselor. Although for the Florida public schools, you will not need letters of recommendation. So this is really an out-of-state kind of thing. Going back to what I was talking about before, letters of recommendation are super important. They contribute to the personal rating that the college looks at, and you want to make sure you give the teachers enough time to do the best job. There's something called other recommenders also. So some schools allow you to add additional letters of recommendation. So that could be from a job, or that can be from a clergy member, a priest, a synagogue, a rabbi, someone who knows you and can provide a different view of you. That could also be a coach, right? So if you're a student who played a sport and you really know your coach, that coach would not be a letter of recommendation from a teacher, but that coach would be an other recommender who, you know, some schools will allow you to include. So now that you know, we understand the basic OVLR process of what you need to submit to the colleges, you know, what are colleges looking for, right? So they get all, you know, thousands and thousands of grades, they get thousands and thousands of test scores, thousands and thousands resumes with extracurricular activities and letters, and then from there, you know, what are they doing with these, and how are they picking their class? And in a nutshell, there are a few main things that colleges are trying to do. The first thing they're trying to do is to create diverse, well-rounded classes. So they want students with different academic interests, students from different locations, they want different athletes, they want students with different backgrounds, artists, musicians, thespians, all kinds of kids. So the reason I put this slide here is because a lot of times students are like, oh, I have nothing to offer a school. You might be surprised, right? So colleges want students who are magicians, and they want students who have interesting backgrounds. They want students who have done interesting things. They want students who take care of their siblings. They want students who do babysitting businesses. They want students who tutor. So you have a lot more to offer a class than you might think. If you are an athlete, I'm just going to take a minute to talk about that. That's a little bit different because athletes get recruited. So they actually target athletes, they actually target artists, they actually target musicians. If you're a recruited athlete, artist, musician, thespian, that's a different path, and I would love to speak to you about that offline as part of a free hour consultation. But otherwise, you know, they still are looking for kids who play sports, even if you're not recruited, and they still are looking for kids who can sing and play an instrument, even if you're not recruited. But just know that, you know, they're looking for diverse, well-rounded classes. There's not one sport or one activity or one subject. Math is not better than English that colleges are looking for. Before I move on, anyone have any other questions? I have one from Gift that I'm excited to get to, but please, 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 please use the chat box. So, so when this is over, I can answer some of your questions. All right. Another thing that colleges are looking for is what's called institutional fit. So institutional fit is whether or not you will be a good match with the school, right? So if you're a student and you say, I really want to study engineering, and the school doesn't offer engineering, well, then you're not a really good institutional fit for the school. Will this child really come, right? So if you say, I'm looking for a big school and it's a small school, will this child really fit in? If your letter recommendation says that the student really thrives in a small environment, right? So maybe a school that has big classes is not the right place for you. So colleges are really looking to make sure that what you are offering and what you're looking for is matching with the institution. And a good thing for you to do is to look and see whether or not, it's not just the school picking you, it's also you picking the school. And schools do have distinct academic differences. On here, I have a few schools: Brown versus Columbia. Columbia in particular is something called a core curriculum, whereas the students study the same subjects for the first 2 years. It's been the same core for at least 200 years. If you like reading about Homer and Virgil and you like the classics, then Columbia is a great place for you. If you don't like a core that you have to follow, you might like a school like Brown, where the curriculum is more open-ended, where they call it the open curriculum, where you can choose what you want to take, you have less requirements. So once again, for the student who says, I really want a set curriculum, I want to follow a curriculum that has been proven and around for hundreds of years, well, Columbia is great for you. If your student says, I really like trying new things and I want to test this and that, well, then Brown might be a better choice. So it's good to check out the institutional fit, not just because the school will be looking for that, but also so that you can pick the right school for you. Another thing that colleges are looking for is something called demonstrated interest. So this doesn't apply as much to the public schools. So like UF, FSU, UCF, USF, University of Maryland, University of Michigan, those are big public schools, and demonstrated interest is less important for these places. But for the private schools, for the smaller schools, certainly showing the school that you've done your homework is super important, right? So prior to COVID, one of the things we recommended for students who could, they would visit the campus. You guys are rising seniors and rising juniors, so you remember there used to be college reps that visited your high school. You have to go to those, right? Or college fairs. When they're happening again, those are super important. And the way I say to my student is if this rep flies down from Massachusetts to come to your high school in Miami, and you can't walk down the hall to go to their information session, you're really telling them something. So if the college rep is in your school, try to go. If there's a college fair and there's a school you're targeting, try to go, walk up, talk to the admissions officer. When you do that, you will be demonstrating interest. Okay, so right now we're not visiting campuses and there are no college reps visits and there are no college fairs. So what can we do? There are virtual school visits. So every college that I've gone to, every college's website that I've gone to is offering virtual visits. And actually, I don't understand why they didn't in the past, but now that it's a thing, I have a feeling this is one of the things that's going to stay around. Virtual school visits include information sessions, they include tours. Sign up. I will tell you, I've been on more than one information session while having dinner. Their times are really strange. And if you don't like a school, you can shut it down. I mean, there's no downside. It's not like before we had to pay to visit the school. Now you just go online and you check it out online. Another thing that schools are doing now are online interviews. So in the past, you had to fly up and meet these admission reps. Now you can do them from home. I would not be as cavalier about the interviews as I am with the online tours. If you are going to have an online interview, please treat it as you would a real interview, right? So wear a nice shirt. No one's going to see your pants. Come with prepared answers. A few very important questions to know the answers to are: 1, tell me about yourself, and 2, why should we attend this college? So what is it about this college that is causing you to apply? So you want to know a little bit about the school or a lot about the school, and then also be able to give what's called an elevator pitch about yourself. The last point I feel pretty strongly about, and that's apply early, right? So if there is an early deadline, so a lot of schools have what's called early deadlines and late deadlines, early deadlines and regular deadlines, always try to make the early deadlines. That definitely showcases your interest. Also for schools that are called rolling admissions, which is first come, first serve, which is a lot of the public schools, applying early just means there are a lot more spaces, right? So the way I explain it to my students is, you know, at the beginning of August, September, there are 1,000 seats. You know, by March, there might be 7 seats. So it's definitely much easier to get in when there are 1,000 seats than there are 7 seats. So apply early. The other awesome thing about applying early is, and you guys can't answer me, but I will tell you, is then you get your result back early, which is so great. So if you apply to USF, let's say in September, and you hear back in October, you really will feel good senior year. So, so don't wait, apply early. For the schools that aren't requiring SATs and ACTs, you can, you know, do it if you don't have one yet. But for the schools that are applying and waiting for your SAT, ACT, you still can submit your application and then submit the standardized tests when you have it. So that's demonstrated interest. All right, I see a bunch more questions and I'm super excited. Thank you, Zion. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Gift. Denia, you said you sent a question in the Q&A box. I am not able to toggle back and forth to 3, you know, Q&As in my thing. So if you could just put it all in the chat, that would make my life a lot easier. And I appreciate that. Okay, so now we talked a little bit about what the colleges are looking for, right? And I just want to take a couple minutes to talk about how you can make your application stand out. So you have your grades, you have your scores, your activities, and now what? You know, now we're putting together our application and we're submitting in the schools. How can you make your application stand out? And the answer, this first one, is through the application essays. And through the essays, you have to highlight your uniqueness, right? So why you? Why should the college expect you? What is your biggest strength, right? So I know in an interview they might ask you your biggest strength and your biggest weakness. I don't want to hear your biggest weakness. I want to hear your biggest strength. I want to hear a good story with strategic content. For school-specific essays, I want to know why you are a good academic fit for the school. I want to know that you've done your homework, right? I don't want a generic answer that you can add, that you can apply to every school, right? If you give me an answer that can go to all of the Florida public schools, I know you have not done your homework. So make sure you go school specific, pick majors within specific schools, just the more specific you can be. And you might ask me, well, how do I do this? Well, remember we talked about those online information sessions and tours? Go to those online information sessions and tours, hear what the school prides itself on, visit the websites, see what the school prides itself on, and then use that information to answer your essays. The last point might sound obvious, but I can tell you that I've seen quite a few college essays where the grammar is off. My company, for those of you who are looking for outside help, does provide essay support. But at the very least, even if you're not going to hire a company for essay support, bring your essay to your English teacher. I've never met an English teacher in any school, and I meet a lot of teachers who would refuse to read a child's college essay for grammar. The English teacher might not know as much as you do about the college, but certainly English teachers in the schools know grammar and will make sure that you have the right grammar. Another thing that I've seen over the years, make sure you spell the name of the college right. You would not believe how many kids spell the college names wrong. And also make sure that throughout your essay, if you're going to cut and paste pieces from other essays, that you do not include names of previous schools in that school. So if you're writing an essay for Penn State, do not have the words Ohio State in your essay. So just be careful with these essays. They are definitely important. Before I finish and open up to questions, and I think I'm right on time, 5 o'clock, I just want to end with a couple final thoughts. Number one, please banish self-doubt. I have no idea why the college process is so stressful. I don't. There are 4,300 colleges last time I looked. So there is college for everyone. There really are. And that might be why this is so overwhelming, is because there are so many colleges. But a student who's willing to work hard and do his or her research, I can promise you that there is a college out there for everyone. And college is exciting, right? So it shouldn't be this huge source of stress. God willing, we will get back to the real world soon. You'll go off to school, you'll make new friends, you'll have new experiences, and there'll be no shortage of exciting opportunities. And hopefully your path will take you, similar to mine, to new exciting places that hopefully will bring you back to South Florida as a new and changed person. So before I conclude, I want to hit some of these questions, and please, please, please keep them coming. Once again, we will be offering the free 1 hour to any students on this call, but I do want to focus on some of these questions, because I know that the questions that one student has is usually a question that everybody has. Okay, let's see. Wait. Okay, Gift, you're first. You have your 2020-2021 Common App essay written. Can someone help me review and edit for me? So Gift, you can definitely use your 1 hour consultation for that. We'd be happy to review your essay. So don't, please do take advantage of it. Just for those of you who are on, new to the call or didn't hear the beginning, after this webinar, maybe not today, but certainly by Monday, we will be sending you an email with information as to how to get your free 1 hour consultation. And you could use that for essay review. You can use that to talk about college lists. You can use that to talk about timing. You can use that to talk about SAT scores, whatever you want to use it for. Please do that. Okay. Let's see. You know what? I will try to do the Q&A. Oh, that actually wasn't so bad. All right. So Dina, I was able to move to the Q&A. Go me. The SAT, ACT being canceled or test optional only for this year? That is a great question, Dina. To repeat that, is the SAT, ACT being canceled or test optional only for this year? I don't know. So some schools are saying that it's going to be more than just the year, and some schools are saying it's just this year. Going back to my presentation, I remain pretty adamant that if you can take the SAT, ACT, you should. It will open more doors. If you cannot take the SAT, ACT, don't worry. They are optional, but please try to take the test if you can. Certainly if you're a rising junior, do not, discount it out. The more, the higher the score, at least right now, the more options you'll have. I want to make a note that their test optional doesn't mean test ignored, right? So if a student sends in a really good test, colleges will still see it. If the school says test ignored, then that's a different conversation. But I really haven't seen many schools saying we're not going to look at tests as they come in. Let's see. Are letters of recommendation recommended? Are letters of interest recommended? I'm not sure what a letter of interest means. If that's an essay, then it's usually required. Letters of recommendation, when they're required, they're required. Okay, so let's say, so if a letter of recommendation is required, then you want to submit it, right? And if a letter of recommendation is optional, then you probably want to submit it too. So anytime something is optional, you still want to include it. I think it's always good to put your best foot forward, show that you're of maximum interest, you're willing to do maximum help. So it's anytime anything is optional, then it's definitely recommended. Let's see, Rebecca Rodriguez. How do we know which teachers are best to write your letters of recommendation? So that is an excellent question, Rebecca. You kind of have to use your gut. Right? So the rule of thumb is to use teachers from your junior year or to use teachers when you are, older is better than younger, and that you want to use teachers from core classes, right? So a teacher who taught you English is better than a teacher who taught you drama. However, I think that a teacher who knows you the best and can say the best things about you is the best teacher to write your letter of recommendation. So if during your junior year you didn't particularly like any of your teachers, or like in this case with COVID, you didn't have your teachers for half the year, I would say go with a sophomore teacher. Once again, a core teacher is better than elective. But if you don't have a core teacher who particularly knows you, Pick an elective, and if you can have 2 teachers, then pick an elective and a core. So one thing I do say to my students is, if you can ask your teacher if they'll write it rather than just inviting them to write it, sometimes they'll tell you if they don't want to write it. And if the teacher says they don't want to write it, then don't go with that teacher, right? You don't just want a letter recommendation. You want a good letter recommendation. So, assuming the teacher says that they'll write the letter, you might even want to send them some information on yourself or some of your proudest moments in the classroom for the teacher to include. Teachers appreciate that. So if you can remind them of some things you've done or some ways that you contribute to the class, I can assure you that the teacher will find that helpful. All right, next question after Rebecca. All right, from Gift. If you are nominated for Posse Scholarship and you got the scholarship, but they don't have your major, can you still apply to another school? I'm not completely familiar with Posse, but I think with Posse you get into one school. So you shouldn't pick the school unless they have your major. So the homework should be done on the front end, right? So when you pick your Posse schools, pick the schools that have your major. So that's a super important thing, right? You don't want to be accepted for the Posse scholarship, which is huge. Full scholarship, amazing. Only to say, oh, darn, I don't want to go to this full scholarship college because they don't have my major. So do your homework on the front end, I would say, and then you won't have that problem, Gift. All right, let's see what Zion said. As a student has a part-time job and may not be able to commit on extracurriculars on weekends, how do college admissions view jobs? Gosh, that's a great question, Zian. And the answer is that a job is an extracurricular activity. So you're great. You don't need more than a part-time job, actually, if you are spending a lot of your time on your part-time job. On the college applications, you will see colleges ask for hours per week and weeks per year per activity. So remember how I talked about you want to go deep. It's not about the breadth, it's about the depth. If you have a job that you do 20 hours a week, or you have a job that you do 30 hours a week, or you take care of your younger siblings for 20 hours a week, put that on the application so they know how you're spending your time. And on the flip side, right, if you are a member of a club where you meet for 1 hour every 4 months, that's not that impressive to college. They would much rather have a student who spends their time on a part-time job. I would recommend more than just a job. So Zian, I assume you're on this call because you also do Achieve Miami. And finding ways to sort of add to your application is great. But if you're spending a significant amount of your time at your job, do not worry. Colleges will see hours per week, weeks per year, and recognize that you are not sitting at home playing video games, but you are working. All right, let's see what else. How much more time do I have? Oh, plenty of time. Okay, so Jose asks, how different is the admissions process if you are interested in applying for an online undergraduate degree? Okay, so this is a great question. Prior to this year, the online schools, for the most part, were these private schools that accepted everybody and you basically paid a lot of money. And I did not recommend, those are what's called for-profit schools. And I would ask you to stay away from them if you can. But now a lot of colleges have these online undergraduate degrees, like UF has online school, at least based on last year. I don't know how much things are changed. It's the same application process, but I will tell you it's significantly easier to get into the online programs. I would have to tell you to look at each specific school's website. Everything is changing. I'm sorry, I do this for a living, but the online stuff is all new. In previous years, it was easier to get into online schools. In previous years, there weren't as many online options as there are now. But right now, there still are a lot of undergraduate not-for-profit, which are like the UFs and the schools that you know of, options for you to choose from. From Valeria, when do schools offer interviews? Do they take place after you apply or before you apply? So it's a great question, Valeria. And the answer is it depends on the school. So super confusing, but as of right now, and I'm just going to tell you the ones that I know of off my head that are doing interviews before you apply and taking interviews now. Tufts is interviewing, Babson is interviewing, Wake Forest is interviewing. Gosh, who else is interviewing? Tulane is interviewing. Valeria, if you have a particular question, a particular school, please email me and I'll get back to you. That said, a lot of schools have interviews after you apply. So Penn, Harvard, Cornell sometimes, Brown, those schools offer the interviews after you apply. So similar to the question about the online undergraduate degree, the answer is it depends. And this year it depends even more because a lot of schools, since the kids can't come to campus, are offering online interviews. So that's a big thing. And if you have a particular school that you're targeting, I don't know if you are, Valeria, but definitely check the website if they're offering interviews because you don't want to miss that opportunity. Here is Dinia's answer again. I'm going to look at the Q&A just to flip around. Oh, there's my online question. All right, so here's a question from Caesar. Of the schools that have recently become test optional, is it more difficult to enroll? For example, is the process longer? So as of right now, the process is the same, right? So the process is exactly the same as it was. The deadline is still the same as it was. You just don't have to submit your standardized test. So, so you still want to fill out your applications this summer. You still want to write your essays this summer. You just don't have to worry about sending a test. But as I said before, test optional does not mean test blind. So you will still have a better advantage if you submit a test score, assuming it is a good one, and it does not hurt to take a standardized test. All right, next question from Rebecca again. If you apply through Common App, is it the same essay for every school? And then you asked another question. I'll start with that. So the Common App has one essay for every school, and then it has additional essays. So, so yes, to answer your question, the Common App has one main essay, but then schools might have, so Wisconsin, for example, has 2 essays. Michigan has 2 to 4 essays. University of Miami has 0 additional essays. Babson has 1 additional essay. So you have that main one, and then you have additional ones. So please make sure that you don't just submit the one if the school asks for multiple essays. And then your second question, Rebecca, my counselor at my school recommends only applying to 6 to 7 schools. What do you believe is best? So we recommend 10, but I don't know if the counselor is recommending 6 to 7 for students who have financial reasons only to apply to 6 to 7. I've never heard the number 6 to 7. I do believe in applying to the right schools, right? So I don't believe in students applying to like 20 schools. I think that's insane. And I think that just is a waste of money and it's a waste of your time. So if you pick the right, I say 10, but schools, you will have great options. But certainly don't, go crazy. That said, if your school list is skewing more competitive, right? So if you're looking at the Harvards and the Yales and the Princetons and Stanfords, you might want more than 10 because those are so competitive. If you're looking at the Florida public schools, right, you probably don't need more than 6 to 7 because you'll also get your answer back pretty quickly. So, so let's say you're saying I'm interested in going to USF. Well, you can apply in September, and if you should hear back by October, November, and if so, then you don't have to add to your application list. But let's say you hear back and it doesn't come back positive, then you can add. The reason for putting together your list is that you don't want to miss a deadline, right? So by having, I say 10, if you have your 10, you can see when the deadlines are and you can make sure you meet them, but recognize you can still add applications after your initial 6 to 7 or 10. Here's another question. Here's a question. I work with Feeding South Florida. Good for you. Will this be an extracurricular? Absolutely. Feeding South Florida and any nonprofit work you do is an extracurricular. So you would add that as a volunteer work. You'd put Feeding South Florida. You put what you do for Feeding South Florida. And then you'd put the hours per week and weeks per year that you work with Feeding South Florida so that the schools know, what kind of time commitment this is. But definitely Feeding South Florida, thumbs up, is an amazing extracurricular activity that makes me really happy that you're doing that, LaShawn. Hopefully I said your name right. Sorry about that. Now there's an Andrea question. There are really only 4 schools that I feel are right for me. My GPA and test scores are all within the range for 4 schools. So will 4 be enough? So Andrea, I don't know. You know, the first thing I will say is there are 3,200 colleges in the US. So I think if you've done your homework, it's hard to believe you can only find 4 schools. You know, maybe use your hour to talk to someone, but I'm guessing you don't know about all 3,200, which is totally normal. But we might be able to find more than 4. You know, but if they have early application deadlines and you apply and you get in and you're done, then great. What I don't want to happen is that, you know, they have late deadlines and then you apply and you don't get in and then you're stuck. So I do have students who apply to one school and they get in and they're done. That's great, but they have other schools queued up in case. So to make a long story short, I think, Andrea, you have to sort of lay out the application deadlines, see if you will have time to add more applications if you need, and also maybe spend a little bit more time. When students say there's only 1 school for me or 4 schools for me, I just know that they are just not aware of the vast number of options there are in the United States. I mean, 3,200, that's a lot of schools. Anyone else have any more questions? And we don't have to go the whole time. It's 5:17, so you've been so good to be on for 47 minutes. All right, I think I've hit them all. So before I go, I just want to reiterate the fact that we are providing a free 1-hour consultation, and would more than happy to answer your particular questions, you know, over the phone, or you can email me. But, you know, I recognize that college admissions is very personal, that students have, you know, their own goals and their own needs, and we feel really thankful to be partnered with Achieve Miami and to provide this service to you who are on the call, and also, you know, after this call as well, or webinar as well. And I see that Jessica is on the call. She's come back, so thank you so much. And I look forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you so much for the questions. That was really amazing. I saw so many. Thank you, Rebecca, too, thank you so much.
Yeah, wow, what incredible questions. And also just what an incredibly helpful, like, cornucopia of information that experience was for everyone. And thank you again, Mandee, for not only your expertise, but also, you know, the 1 hour of free college counseling that you're offering attendees here. Take advantage of it. It's really something special, and something that so many kids can benefit from. You said so many great things, like plan, don't panic. Love that. And also less breadth and more depth. I hope everyone on this call gained as much, you know, as much information as I know I did on this call, and also, you know, some confidence in the fact that, you know, things might be a little tumultuous right now, but there are people here supporting you, and there's a lot of information out there that you can take advantage of, including that from international college counselors. Thank you so much, Mandee, for doing this yet again with us. And I'm excited to hear how these hours go, and also excited to just continue this relationship. This is awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. A great night. And happy 4th.